Retro Now.
Hey, this is Lauren Mary Kim, and I'm the stunt double for Ahsoka Tano in Clone Wars and the armorer in The Mandalorian. You're listening to Dennis and Jay on Podcast Stardust. This is the way.
Hello, and welcome to Podcast Stardust. This is the fully armed and operational podcast dedicated to Star Wars news, reviews, and discussion. I'm Dennis Keithley.
And I'm Jay Krebs.
And it's time to wrap up another week with a look at some recent Star Wars news. But before we dive into that, Jay, you want to go ahead and remind everybody where we can be found on social media?
Of course, we are very easily found on Facebook and Instagram at Podcast Stardust.
Okay, the dish is lined, the signal's boosted to maximum output. The signal is boosted to maximum output. The shield is down, and we are now broadcasting to the galaxy. So, Jay, this is the first time you and I have talked since before Halloween. And I remember asking you about what your Halloween plans were, and you were talking about how this is like the first year you really didn't have much since you retired. And but with all that said, anything end up happening? Did you do much for Halloween? Did you have any Star Wars type experiences or anything?
No, unfortunately not. I was perusing through Instagram, just sort of living vicariously through a lot of my friends and whatnot. But my husband and I actually, we decided on a scary movie, and so we were looking at a lot of different movies that are out there, and not Star Wars related, but kind of Star Wars adjacent, because one of the stars in the movie is Katie Sackhoff. So Bo-Katan herself, and it's a movie that was actually made in, I think it was like 2013 or 2014. It's called Oculus. Have you ever heard of it?
I've heard of it, but don't ask me what it's about.
It's about a really creepy mirror, I'll just put it that way, and Katie
Okay.
Sackhoff plays the mom. So we just decided we wanted something scary, but not, like lose sleep for days kind of scary. So,
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
yeah, and of course, Katie Sackhoff is always a joy to watch. So it was a good movie. I'd give it 3 out of 5. It was all right. What about you?
Mm.
What'd you do? You had to have more fun than me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know if I had more fun than you, but the experience was simply different. I think I was talking about how we tend to get a whole lot of trick-or-treaters just due to the fact that our neighbors down the street have a really incredible display, and they do. And they may have had as many people as they usually get, just not as many migrated up the street to our place. So we were prepared for well over 100 trick-or-treaters, and I think we got about 60 or 70. And towards the end of the night, we were giving like multiple pieces of candy to all the
Nice.
kids that stopped by because we just did not want all that stuff in the house. And we were giving out the full-size candy bars and such, which was a big hit with the kids. I was a little disappointed that I don't think we had a single trick-or-treater show up in a Star Wars costume the entirety.
Really? Aw,
Yeah,
that's what
and
I was just gonna ask you, like, what was your favorite Star Wars costume that the kids had?
yeah, and
Bummer.
that is like a given almost every single year, whether it's a Kylo Ren, a Stormtrooper, a Rey, or something, but nothing this year. I did put out my Darth Vader. Now I had to kind of rig it a little bit because it has a bulb in the back of it that lights up the jack-lantern that the Pumpkin Geek carved way back in Halloween at Rancho Obi-Wan 10 years
Mhm.
ago. And last year, my dog Zeb got excited when
Mm.
trick-or-treater showed up, knocked it off the windowsill and broke that bulb. And I haven't been able to find a replacement that works for it yet. But I found an LED, one of those little puck type lights that you can press on and it lights up. And I
Oh,
put
yeah.
that underneath the pumpkin and that ended up lighting up. I got a ton of compliments from the kids. They're like, whoever carved that is next level. And I was like, I wish I had his contact information so I could share that. So that was the Star Wars highlight of Halloween, was just the reaction to the Darth Vader pumpkin. The number of parents that were pulling out their phones to take pictures of it and everything like that. That was huge. I posted it on a couple of different social media outlets, with just the caption "Happy Halloween," like, "Oh man, that's next level, dude! Way to go!" And I'm like, I just kind of didn't have the heart to tell people that. If you've been paying attention, I post this picture every single year.
You do indeed. You do
It's
indeed. It's
it's
a
it's
classic.
not yeah, it's not my work, and I don't really want to take credit for it, but after people giving me such effusive praise, it's just kind of like, how do you handle that? So at any rate, I'm handling it now. I didn't carve
Well, there
that
you go.
pumpkin, but I love it, and so it's going out for Halloween every year until it disintegrates, whenever that is. But
That is fantastic. So what was
yeah,
your favorite costume that the kids showed up in? Anybody have something like super creative or out of the box kind of thing? I'm just curious.
mm, I know K-pop Demon Hunters was like the big thing for this year, and so we had a couple of those. I saw a number of the scary ghosts from a scary movie.
Mm, mhm.
That which surprised me. I just didn't think that was as relevant as it was anymore. But I guess it's just such a simple costume to get and put together that's popular.
Sure.
And I'm trying to think what else. Uh, a few plague doctors, which is cool. That's like a
Nice.
big hit with Alec. So he was happy to see those as well. But it was fun. Halloween is fun. It's fun interacting with the kids, and especially the ones that are super appreciative of that type of thing. And the kids in the neighborhood that you see all the time, but you don't necessarily talk to, but they stop by and it's like, oh, hey, good to see you, that type of thing. And that was a lot of fun. But and I don't know. I ended up watching the Muppets Haunted Mansion and the other Haunted Mansion movie that was out recently, and maybe a thing or two else, but those were the two big that I put on. And I didn't get to watch them as much because just the pace of trick-or-treaters that were showing up. But
Mhm.
it
Mhm.
was fun. I enjoy Halloween. And like I said, I was just kind of hoping to see more Star Wars, and anyone who had shown up at my house with Star Wars was going to get more stuff. But alas, it wasn't meant to be.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd be curious if our listeners had a similar experience or if they were lucky enough to see any Star Wars trick or treaters in their neighborhood. Like I said, we
Yeah.
don't do trick or treating just because we're right in the middle of the country. but
Right.
but I'm curious. So hit us up on social media for sure.
Indeed. Indeed. All right. Well, there's not a lot of news this week, but let's go ahead and dive into what we've got. And the first thing is that Matt Smith has kind of given an off the cuff update on his schedule for shooting Starfighter, which comes out in 2027. And in an interview that was picked up by Gizmodo, he said, I'm going through this process now for the job I'm about to do. We're going through the process of trying to find a costume. And sometimes you don't know if you love a costume until you've worn it for a couple of days. I'm about to Star Wars in December, and we're sort of trying to develop the look for that. So, um, fantastic. I don't pretend to be an expert on how movies are shot or anything, but this movie has actually been shooting for a little while now, and they've been billing him as a key member of the cast. So I was a little surprised to kind of find out that he hasn't been on set at all for this movie and is not going to be doing that until a month from now.
Mhm. Yeah, but you know what? I love the fact that they're already starting to look into the costumes and the costume designs.
Hmm.
And I looked up because I was thinking to myself, "Ooh, I wonder who is the costume designer for this." And apparently, according to IMDb, it's Sutriat and Larlib, which I have not ever heard of, but she has actually done the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. She's got some credits
Mm.
there. So I'm just wondering if she was partially responsible for doing the Fourth Sister Inquisitor, and if so, thank you very much. But you know me, I'm always into the costume end of it, and I think it's super cool that he's alluding to the fact that he gets a little bit of choice in what his costume design is actually going to be because he gets to sort of try it out and live in it for a little bit and stretch his legs, so to speak. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah, that struck me as unusual as well, especially when you consider like the Darth Vader costume. That thing's unwieldy, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's Dave Prowse was picked to fill out that costume because he was a bodybuilder and they needed a huge person in order to do it. But then they had to have someone completely different to do the choreography for the saber duels and such. And then we've all seen the behind the scene videos of when Hayden Christensen at the end of Revenge of the Sith was being fitted for the Darth Vader costume, and how he had to camp with the platform boots and such in
Right.
order to pull that off. So yeah, that's cool. And it is a new character, so you can afford to have the leeway with designing the costume and all. But I had not expected him to get that much input into the costume, which suggests maybe whatever role that he's in doesn't have necessarily a look that the fans would come to expect.
Yeah, yeah, and I just love the whole design process behind it too.
Mhm.
So, yeah, it'll be really interesting to see what they come up with. And you know what else this costume designer has actually done as I was sort of perusing around here? Alien Earth. And
Really?
you and I
Okay.
were
Yeah.
just talking
I
about
was gonna
that.
say.
So, yeah, so she's got definitely got a lot of sci-fi experience for sure.
And what impresses me about that credit is that what I found when watching, I know you've got an episode to go, but what I found when I was watching that series is that the look of the show, from the sets to the costumes to the effects and everything, are a really great blend of the 1970s aesthetic that they used for Alien and what you would expect out of a sci-fi film today.
Oh,
And I thought that the costumes that they used for the crew that were on the ship in that first episode, so I'm trying not to spoil anything, looked like they came right out of that original Alien movie back in the
yeah.
day.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so that's some talent to be able to replicate something like that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And realistically, costumes to me, anyways, I feel like it's a form of world building in and of itself because
Hmm.
you know, as you just pointed out, it can be an aesthetic that not only takes you to a place but a time. So, yeah, so that's very cool.
Hmm. Indeed, indeed. Well, I'm excited for this movie. It's one of the things that we got the Mandalorian Grogu coming out, and I'm excited for that. I know there's a bit of whatever your perspective is. Some people that are not thrilled with the trailer. I thought the trailer was awesome. I can't wait to see that movie. I liked what they were doing with the trailer and stuff like that. But one of the things that appeals to me in Starfighter is a whole lot of unknown with
Mhm.
that movie, is that we don't
Yes.
know what the main character is about. We've only got a very basic synopsis that this character that Ryan Gosling is playing is trying to help some kid get somewhere for some reason, and he's being pursued by bad guys. We can
Yes.
draw a lot of assumptions based on other Star Wars stories about that. But again, at the end of the day, these aren't known characters that, and they don't have like known endpoints like what we knew with Andor and Rogue One and the likes there. So
Mhm.
there is a great deal of unknown, which is appealing when it comes to Star Wars movie. Who's going to live? Who's going to die? What's this all even about? For the most part, all we can do is make assumptions right now. And I suspect there's some spoiler sites out there that know everything about this movie that there is to know, but I'm not in that crowd. So I'm reveling in the unknown right now.
And isn't that kind of a switch in some ways to where we would have been a couple of decades before? You know, because we had so many known characters and we were so comfortable with them that we wanted more stories about them. And that's what a lot of expanded universe and legends was all about, was going back to those comfort characters. And yes, there was some new characters built into there here and there and everywhere, but now we're thirsting for what's out there, what's new. You know, tell us new stories. And as much as we love those well-known characters, introducing these new characters is so much fun.
Right, and in a way, it reminds me of the hype leading up to The Force Awakens. Yeah, Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher and Mark Hamill are going to be in that movie, and we knew it. But what did we see in that first trailer? We got to
Right.
see John Boyega all of a sudden popping up from the bottom of the screen, decked out in stormtrooper armor. We got to see Oscar Isaac at the helm of a X-wing. We got to see Daisy Ridley doing stuff on film. And we didn't know what those characters were, what their names were, and what they were even doing until they started introducing them to us at Star Wars Celebration.
Mhm.
And so again, getting new characters, fleshing out a universe, and giving us new stuff is special in that regard. So, the hype meter is not big on that movie right now, but I'm looking forward to the Mandalorian and Grogu, and I am sure I'll go to see that movie multiple times in the theaters. But I am really looking forward to the experience of the anticipation of Starfighter when they really start teasing, images, when we get that like issue of Entertainment Weekly when we get our quote unquote
Oh
first look,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
or that type of thing, or that first teaser trailer drops, sometime 2 months maybe after Mandalorian Grogu is out, and then we get to start speculating more about that movie and what's going on there. I mean, there's all kinds of rampant speculation out there right now, but it doesn't. And I hesitate to say this because I feel like I'm going to offend somebody. It doesn't feel as informed as what we would otherwise expect.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, right now too, I think it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. There's just not a whole lot going on. It's kind of,
Mhm.
a twinkle in the eye of Star Wars fans. But you're right. Once we start getting more here and there, I think especially after The Mandalorian Grogu comes out and, some of the, I hate to say like the hype fades down on that. This is what's going to end up, getting amped up at that point.
Indeed, 100%. Okay. So the other big news item we got is, I love this. Who hoarded this stuff is my question before I give you the story. But Boba Fett's blaster from The Empire Strikes Back is going up for auction. So his EE3 carbine blaster is going to be put up for auction. It's got a pre-sale value estimate ranging from $462,000 to $924,000, and they're anticipating it could easily fetch $1 million for that.
Ow.
I-
Ow.
Okay, how are people getting their hands on this stuff? There's got to be a story. There's got to be documentaries. There's podcasts about everything else in this world. There's behind the scene documentaries that show up on Blu-ray features, DVD features, on Disney Plus, about every other aspect of the news. Who's following the props in this situation? How
Yeah.
does this thing just end up for auction somewhere? Who's putting it up for auction in that regard? But this is cool. I know we talked about this when Vader's lightsaber was going up for auction, was a month or two ago. Like, why is there not a situation where the public can go into these auction houses and for $10-15 see all the items from these movies that are it's a temporary museum in that place from all. I didn't even keep track of what else was going up for auction in the same thing, but it's a lot of props from a lot of other movies there. I would love to see that stuff. I don't
Oh yeah.
personally want to spend the money. I don't have $924,000, but I
Oh, come
don't.
on, Dennis.
Yeah, and even if I did, I don't know if that's what I would spend it on. But I don't have that type of money. It's not that I so much want to get this stuff, but just seeing it would be fun. I remember when, gosh, it would have been easily 12 years ago or so, when the the traveling exhibit of the Star Wars costumes went
Oh
around the
yeah.
country. And I went
Mhm.
down to Fort Worth, which is like an hour drive for me, and saw it with my family and just looked at the costumes and some of the props and stuff. Loved it. And I was happy to pay the $15-20 per person to get in and see that stuff. There's just an opportunity for that type of thing. And I don't know. We know what's going on with George Lucas's uh, Museum of Narrative Art type of thing, and I'm sure there's gonna be plenty of props in that. But again, I'm just curious, how are this? That's the backstory I want to know. Not so much that it's on auction, but how does this stuff like end up in auction this way?
Right. Yeah, just like we were saying, the original dress of Princess Leia from A New Hope was in somebody's attic or some storage area, and then all of a sudden it was like, "Oh, blow the dust off. Wow, look what we have here." So,
Mhm.
yeah, it's how do people end up with this kind of stuff is indeed very fascinating. But I'm with you. I would love to be able to see these in person, even if it was just one of those live stream kind of things. Just to of course in person is great, but you could pay just a couple bucks to do, get a like a virtual ticket to go in and see some of these things because that's really cool. I love
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
idea.
Yeah. So every time we do one of these stories, we end up doing some sort of a question like, if you could own any prop from Star Wars, which one would you pick? And I don't want to do that exact same type of question again. I want to narrow it down a little bit. If you were offered any one screen used blaster from Star Wars, which one would you pick?
I would have to go with Princess Leia's blaster from A New Hope,
Hmm.
simply because for me, the nostalgia behind that is personally just how I fell in love with Star Wars in the first place. And Leia was my very first kind of female role model, I've always said. in Star Wars, and, to the extent that, if I was afraid to do something, I would say to myself, like, "What would Leia do?" kind of thing.
Mhm.
And ironically, when I was looking over the notes for the news tonight and, I knew we were going to talk about this particular subject, I looked up Leia's blaster and I had no idea that it has since been named Satine's Lament. Did you
Huh.
know that it had this name?
That's news to me. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because I went into Wikipedia, and it's the blaster that she uses on the Tantive Fort when they're over Tatooine, and she defended herself against the stormtroopers. But yeah, if you look it up on Wikipedia, that's what it says. So the actual model itself is called the Defender Sporting Blaster Pistol. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I'm
it's
reading on the
nicknamed
Wikipedia
Satine's
page as you
Lament.
say it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So it's named after Duchess Satine. And
Interesting.
yeah, ironically, a pacifist who hated violence.
That's a good choice. If for no other reason, Carrie Fisher handled it, right?
Yes.
So yeah, when I was thinking about this, I wrote the question, then I deliberately didn't pay any attention to it for a while, didn't even think about it for a while. So kind of wanted my answer to be more instinctual. And the top three for me, in no particular order, were Han Solo's blaster,
Mhm.
Chewbacca's bowcaster, and
Nice.
Boba Fett's rifle in this
Ooh,
situation. And the reason being is that, all three of them are fairly distinctive. And I don't know that you can necessarily go wrong with any of them, but I think ultimately it would be Harrison Ford having touched Han Solo's blaster is what
right.
is, and that one is very recognizable. And I had considered Leia's. The other one I was considering was the little blaster that Queen Amidala had in her throne
Mhm,
in the
mhm.
Phantom Menace. But I was like, but that gets such a small amount of screen time compared to everything else. Whereas Han Solo's DL-44 shows up in scene after scene, movie after movie, unlike. So
Right.
that's what gave that the edge to me in that
Yeah.
regard.
No, that's a great choice, and that's definitely gotta be in my top 5 as well. I thought about, Padme's blaster as well, and then since you mentioned the bowcaster, oh yeah,
Yeah.
that is definitely a great one, and not necessarily screen used, but I think Crosshair's big blaster is, awesome too if we're going for cartoon used. And I love
Yeah.
Hera's Blurg blaster, but I have a 3D printed version of that, which I love. I love that blaster.
Yeah. I think what prevents me from doing something like that is that I think there's a Mandela effect. You could put up like 3 or 4 different blasters and ask people to pick out which one was Crosshairs, and people would be hard pressed to pick out exactly which one it was. The average
Mhm,
Star Wars fan would be. Whereas something like, again, Han Solo's blaster, people are going to know. If that one they're going to get more right more often than not when it
mhm,
came down to it. And so I understand the appeal for that one, and it's a personal choice. I mean, you don't have to pick it for the notoriety, if anything. But when you're talking about things that are iconic and synonymous with Star Wars, you get to those main characters, and that is what people think of when it comes down to. So I don't know. Like I said, it's a personal choice. You can pick whatever you want for whatever reason you want, but when it gets down to it, it's like, what am I going to do with it when I even have it? But that's not the
mhm.
question. It's which one would you like to have? So,
Yeah, yeah, and I think Master Replicas has done several of these that you can purchase if you
mhm,
wanted to have one for yourself. I'll tell you who would be really good at this is Colby Wan. My
mm,
son, he knows all the blasters, like every single model, name, like what manufacturer they were from. And I think a lot of that is from him playing things like Battlefront, where you get to customize
mhm,
all of your different players and that type of thing. But he is all about the weapons. So I need to
yeah.
ask him.
My brother has a 3D printer and has printed up a bunch of these blasters from Star Wars. And
Nice.
oftentimes he has no idea which one he's printing up before he gets to it. So he's taken to like texting me. He's like, so whose blaster is this? Because the file will just have the name. It won't, not who used it or who it belonged to or anything. And so I have to give him some idea of what that is. But he's had an impressive collection that he's given a bunch of away to kids that enjoy Star Wars, and printed up a bunch for his daughter, who's a big Star Wars fan as well. So
That's awesome.
yeah. One of the other ones that occurred to me was like, it'd be fun to have one of the Stormtrooper blasters, especially one that Mark Hamill or Harrison Ford have used in A New Hope when they were infiltrating the Death Star. But I think what pulls me back from that is how many of those did they make? It kind of feels like if there's any potential for any one of these blasters to flood the market, it would be the Stormtrooper blaster. So,
yeah,
I decided against that one.
100%.
Yeah. All right. Well, again, not a whole lot of news, but a lot of fun discussion. So that was cool. I'm glad we got to kind of discuss some of those things here. It is the advantage of not having a heavy news week, where we can just kind of get into these side topics and not have to worry about covering everything. But there we are. So at any rate, thank you all for joining us for this episode of Podcast Stardust and our discussion of the week's Star Wars news. We hope you enjoyed it. We'll be back, of course, at the end of next week with more news. And if you want to make sure you don't miss it, please consider subscribing to the show if you haven't done so already. It's easy to do. You listen to podcasts, you know how to do that. Just hit that like and subscribe button. And once you've done that, we would really appreciate your ratings and reviews of your podcatcher of choice. Of course, the best one for that being Apple Podcasts. Those seem to drive the market and helping others find the show. Did a fun little search today about our podcast, and a lot of AI is calling us one of the prominent podcasts to use Stardust in its title, but flattering myself, but there we are. And if you want to find out more about Podcast Stardust, one of the best places you can do that is over retrozap.com. That's the home to the RetroZap Podcast Network and a bunch of other great shows. Currently active, you've got the Enjoy Stuff podcast, Superhero Suite, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Case Files with their current Marvel show. So there's some other great shows that are going on over there right now. Jay, you want to go ahead and remind everybody what our social media contacts are and how else they can get in touch with us?
Absolutely, Dennis. And just want to say a quick hello there to all of our new listeners. And you can always connect with us on Facebook and Instagram most easily at Podcast Stardust. And we do maintain some Pinterest boards for all kinds of fun ideas for everything Star Wars. And I need to get some new holiday ideas up there as well. So give me a week or so and I'll have a whole bunch of new stuff up there. And we also have our 2 YouTube outlets, so our traditional YouTube as well as YouTube Music. So please subscribe to both of those and let us know your thoughts on this stuff. What blaster would you pick, kind of thing. And subscribe and share those out to your friends too. And if you have any kind of questions for us, Dennis just recently did a great listener question episode in one of our past episodes here recently. And you can email us at podcaststardust@gmail.com. And when we have enough, we will put them together in another listener question episode. And I really want to do that. So please, 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 please send us those questions.
Jay is chomping at the bit.
Yes, I am.
As an aside, thank you to all those that reached out to us and congratulated us on our 6th anniversary. That meant a lot. I appreciate it. I'm grateful for all you listening to the show and having been as loyal to the show as you've been over the past couple of years. So again, thank you very much. So upcoming on the show on Monday, we are going to start our coverage of Volume 3 of Visions, and I cannot wait for that discussion. And then on Wednesday, we are getting a jump start on the holiday season, and Jay is doing an early edition of World Between Worlds. So make sure you come around and check that out so you can get ready for your Star Wars holiday shopping. But with that said, thanks for listening to episode 962 of Podcast Stardust, everyone. Have the best weekend, and until next time, may the Force be with you.